Chapter 23, Year 884 PXF, Late Spring. Osmond awoke lying on the ground in front of a hearth. Yanri and Anson were leaning over him with concerned looks on their faces. Osmond sat up and looked around the dim room lit with only a single glowing lantern. The room was in chaotic disarray, but he recognized it as the inside of Anson's home. Yanri pulled Osmond to his feet.
"Somehow we ended up here,"
Yanri offered.
"I thought the portal felt like a returning stone, but I wasn't expecting this."
Osmond was still getting his bearings. "It was the fox," he said, as though it explained everything. Anson and Yanri looked at him expectantly, waiting for further details. "It's a lot. The fox was also an agent of my father, and now she is up here with the rest." Osmond tapped his head. Osmond looked around. A helpful neighbor must have removed the human's body and boarded up the window the cloak ray had broken through. Between the gaps, he could see only darkness. "It's late. Anson, is there somewhere we can sleep?" Osmond asked. "There is a double bed in the loft, if you don't mind sharing," Anson answered.
"That'll be great,"
Yanri answered, guiding Osmond toward the stairs. Osmond was still reeling from the revelations of his father's life now swimming in his head. He allowed Yanri to get him upstairs, strip him down to his underbreeches, and put him under the covers. Yanri soon joined him and cuddled up under his arm. Seeing him without his shirt, Osmond could not ignore the amount of mass Yanri had lost during his time in the Saldrig with him. Osmond ran his hand along Yanri's upper arm, the remaining muscle in stark relief under paper-thin skin. "I am so sorry," Osmond whispered. Yanri pulled away, looking Osmond in the eye.
"I'm not,"
Yanri replied.
"I would have happily given up an arm or a leg for all you have shown and given me."
Yanri tenderly ran the back of his fingers along Osmond's face.
"I got to experience a small part of your life in all its heart-wrenching, terrible beauty. But now I understand who you truly are. You've shared the truth of you with me."
Osmond's eyes brimmed with emotion as the keel of gratitude warmed his torso like a gentle sunbeam falling across his chest on a chilly morning. Yanri flopped over onto his back and laid his forearm across his forehead.
"I have a son,"
he stated, seemingly amazed at his proclamation.
"I mean, sort of, right? I'm not his dad or anything, but he is a part of me. I can feel his tiny heart next to mine when I think of him."
"A soul and the life forces of two people came together and resulted in a person. It doesn't matter if it was by magic in this case. And while you aren't a dad to Quentin now, you have a lifetime to become one," Osmond added with a hopeful uplift in his voice.
"3 people,"
Yanri corrected.
"You were a part of this too. Your blood blade, your inherited magic."
Yanri grasped Osmond's hand and looked into Osmond's eyes.
"It means we can all stay together and share a life with each other."
Osmond didn't let the sad smile he felt in his heart reach his lips. Yanri was so young. Osmond didn't doubt Yanri's earnest belief that his words could become real. That life could be a big, hopeful adventure followed by a happy ending and enduring love. Osmond had seen Yanri's soul just as Yanri had seen his. Love had yet to touch his young friend's heart. To be someone's first love in Uldani culture was considered one of the most sacred honors and responsibilities because it undoubtedly meant you would be their first heartbreak as well. Whether Yanri was feeling its keel yet, Osmond couldn't be sure, but he could see a reflection of himself looking at Serena for the first time, coloring his hopeful gaze into Osmond's eyes.
"Kiss me,"
Osmond said. Yanri leaned in and kissed Osmond deeply. The warmth of Osmond's gratitude for having someone like Yanri as a part of his life who also wanted him to be in their life as well coalesced into a gentle knot deep in his stomach. The knot tightened as the kiss lingered. The keel of love bloomed within Osmond for only the second time in his life. Yanri broke the kiss and leaned back.
You too?
Yanri smiled. Yeah. Osmond nodded back. Yanri explored Osmond's face with his lips, brushing the stubble of his cheek against Osmond's smooth jaw as he went. Yanri's kisses found every place on Osmond's face where a hidden scar marked his soul and gently laid his lips upon each, finally finding Osmond's mouth again. The kind affirmation of his true self had ignited the judge's hunger, and in response, Osmond's canine teeth had already fully formed into fangs to meet Yanri's lips as they pressed into his. Yanri ran his tongue along Osmond's pointed teeth and said between kisses,
Someone's hungry.
Osmond paused in their kissing and looked at Yanri with serious eyes. First love is dangerous, Yanri, he said tenderly. I wasn't sure I would survive or if I could ever love again after mine. It never ends well.
I know,
Yanri said a bit sadly.
But when it gets messy, if it gets messy, I want it to be with you.
Lust ignited a burning fire at the nape of Osmond's neck, both at hearing those words and with the added fuel of the intensity of their shared experience over the last day. Osmond bared his fanged teeth and began to kiss Yanri's mouth again in earnest. Yanri accepted his savage kisses, then slowed, wearing a sly smile Osmond couldn't decipher. Yanri pulled himself closer and threw a leg over Osmond's hips.
What the hell's?
Osmond exclaimed, looking under the sheets.
It wasn't on purpose. I swear.
Yanri's sly smile turned positively wicked. Huh, was the only reply Osmond could muster as his fangs grew even more ferocious. Morning dawned with Osmond, for once, cuddled under Yanri's arm. He yawned and slowly stretched, trying not to disturb Yanri as he rolled onto his back, but to no avail. Yanri's eyes fluttered open, and he rolled over to snuggle into Osmond's chest.
Can we stay here just a little longer before it all comes crashing down on us again?
Yanri asked. Osmond stroked Yanri's hair in consolation, but Anson's voice drifted up from downstairs before he could answer.
Coffee's ready.
Anson continued.
You boys should get back down to the lagoon and pack for travel. Whatever our plan, it probably involves a boat.
As an afterthought, Anson asked,
Where are you staying? I can meet you there after I bring some order to this mess.
We're at the Windward Star,
Yanri called down as he quickly rolled out of his bed onto his feet and began to put back on his clothes from the day before. Osmond again wished he had Yanri's ability to go from sleeping to out the door in a handful of heartbeats. Yanri was already downstairs with a mug of coffee when Osmond joined them, rubbing his bleary eyes and fussing with the bird's nest of curls his hair had opted to create this morning. Anson offered him a steaming mug, but Osmond declined. I'll just grab some juice down below, Osmond said as he ran his tongue across scummy teeth, now returned to usual size. Anson placed 2 Driftglide potions on the counter. I always keep a couple around in case I get a yen to scavenge for driftwood.
Thanks,
Yanri said, then gave Anson a big hug. He pulled back, and the two clasped each other's forearms. In a sincere but light-hearted voice, Yanri continued.
In a way, we're Quentin's parents, you know, even though our son is technically a year older than me.
He then smiled gratefully.
It seems we've only known each other for less than a blink, but I can't imagine a better person to have shared this with, and depending on how this all works out, more of my life with.
Yanri moved aside to make room for Osmond, who hugged Anson fiercely. He gently pounded Anson on his back with his fist. Don't ever leave, Dad. Anson, with choked breath, replied, Never again, son. Never again. Anson pulled away and said, Okay, you two take care of each other, and I will see you this afternoon.
We will!
Osmond and Yanri replied in unison as they walked out the door. Since they were headed to the lagoon, Osmond and Yanri couldn't jump from Anson's garden. They instead retraced their steps back to the entry district of Rail to take the stairs back to the landing at the apex of the arching root stairs, as from there it would be close to a vertical drop down to the Windward Star. Along the way, they passed multiple members of the Shaman Council walking the street. Osmond and Yanri gave them a nod as they passed them and assumed there must be some gathering in Bowtown to bring so many out this early in the day. The drift glider platform was deserted at this hour, as those coming up from below wouldn't arrive until mid-morning. With a quick kiss, Osmond and Yanri leaped out into the open sky. Having had enough excitement from the day before, the two only waited until they were 3/4 of the way to the ground before giving each other a nod and quaffing their potions. They instantly decelerated into a slow drift and glided down to the promenade. They landed 100 yards away from Jock's juice stand, but apparently Jock wasn't working this morning, as the silhouette of a statuesque figure with broad shoulders and a tight bob of well-coiffed hair occupied the space behind the counter. As they approached, the figure turned to them and immediately dropped their drink from their manicured hand.
Yanri? Osmond? We thought you were dead!
The figure exclaimed.
Jock?
Osmond and Yanri exclaimed in unison. Jock looked to be at least 20 years old, if not 21. Only a single word came to Osmond's mind to encompass Jock, which he shared immediately.
You are magnificent, but what in the 9 hells is going on?
Osmond couldn't keep a hint of panic out of his voice, but shakily remembered his manners.
What's the special and your pronouns for the day? They, them, and passion fruit guava,
Jock replied by rote, then ran around the counter on shoes that could be more aptly classified as weapons to hug the two of them.
Where have you been? Everyone said you died in the first attack.
A creeping dread began to rise in Osmond as his mind tried to grasp what was happening. Yanri was the first to recover his reasoning.
Jock, how long ago was that?
Over 5 years ago, Jock replied without a hint of deception. Year 889 PXF. Late summer. Osmond reeled as understanding hit him. The price. This was the price of his shifting forms, of choosing to deceive Serena and fight instead of telling her he didn't have the vermilion blade. Osmond knew the scales hadn't balanced evenly. Yanri had lost perhaps 15 pounds, but Osmond had soul-channeled 3 times in a handful of minutes, and then the matriarch's dramatic healing in the chrysalis, along with Yanri and the prince's wounds being all but erased. It had taken his body a decade to pull itself back together with Wilfred's constant ministrations. He suddenly realized it hadn't been hours in that clearing as Yanri ate the pyre of vitality that had been the bear. It had been years. The price was time. Yanri was snapping his fingers in front of Osmond's eyes.
Come back to us, Wondertoes. We need you, big guy.
Osmond grabbed Yanri like he was drowning.
This is the price. It's my fault. We lost 5 years. Serena has had 5 years.
Osmond's head snapped around to look at Jock.
You said the first attack. What's been going on?
Let's just all sit and calm down. Jock circled the counter, grabbing 3 specials, and guided them to a small high-top table. Handing Osmond one of the tankards of pink fruit juice, they said, "Drink this. You've gone pale, and we don't need you swooning on us." Jock leaned in and began to tell the tale. After the first attack up at Rail, there were 3 more. People said the creatures had snuck in on boats disguised as people's luggage, and one was rumored to be inside some poor guy. Jock leaned back from the table. Well, the Shaman Council was going to have none of that, so they closed down the whole damned port while implementing security measures. Jock waved their hand in front of their face. It was a mess. We had to live off of what we had or what they could teleport in and bring down from Bowtown for 3 months. Jock paused, gauging the interest of their audience.
Then what?
Yanri asked, engrossed. Jock threw one arm behind their chair and continued. It was quiet for a bit.
Then, a year and a half later, something big went down at the port. The Shaman Council burned 2 ships out of Elerion down to the waterline and sunk them in the harbor. Witnesses say they saw dozens of nightmare creatures diving off the ships trying to escape the flames.
Yanri dutifully exclaimed,
"No!"
to Jacques' pause for emphasis.
"Yes."
Jacques nodded.
"They say Melisari was ready to declare war on the Empire again, but the Emperor of Zalia disavowed any involvement with Elerion or the creature attacks on our shores. As an offer of good faith, they offered the Shaman Council stations aboard their ships to patrol the waters between the continent's southern coast and the Isles."
Osmond sat stunned, trying to process what it all meant. Had Serena and possibly Tommen been so desperate and misled that they would risk restarting the war with the Uldani Isles? Serena, perhaps, but Tommen? Jacques, catching Osmond wool-gathering in the middle of their story, snapped their fingers in front of Osmond's eyes.
"Stay with me, Twinkle Toes."
Wonder Toes,
Yanri corrected. Jacques shot Yanri a withering look, then sighed and continued.
It's been quiet since then, but rumors began to flow with the new cooperation with Zalia. It is all jumbled about what happened when, but here is what they say.
Jacques cleared their throat.
"Remember that uprising 15 years ago across the channel? The knight that went rogue? They say he came back."
Osmond and Yanri glanced at each other.
"Talon." "Yeah, Talon-noble name something,"
Jacques confirmed.
"Well, he tore the whole place up again, pillaging and terrorizing everyone who was left. Meanwhile, up in that city of theirs, the place is being overrun with, get this, the same type of creatures that showed up here."
Osmond and Yanri looked at each other again. Jacques, realizing they were losing their audience, fluttered their fingers and finished with,
"And there is some crazy cursed sword or some such that everyone is looking for or something."
Osmond calmly asked, "And there have been no attacks for the last 3 years?"
"Not that I've heard, and I hear everything,"
Jacques replied. Osmond took a deep breath and grabbed Yanri's wrist. "We need to go." They got up from the table and started to leave when Osmond asked over his shoulder, "Do you think the Windward Star will have rooms?"
"Are you kidding? The place is deserted compared to the old days,"
Jacques replied.
"Heck, they probably still have your room. When I tried to gather your stuff when you died, the crone at the desk wouldn't let me in because his parents paid some outrageous amount for a whole decade up front."
Jacques waved a manicured finger at Yanri.
Thanks, Jack,
Yanri called and blew them a kiss as they ran toward the Windward Star. Their room was much as they had left it, albeit freshly dusted, the bed made up, and clothes that had been on the floor 5 years ago folded neatly on the bureau due to the weekly cleaning service that came with board. Osmond began pacing the room as Yanri settled on the bed. Both were speechless, processing all the implications of losing 5 years. Yanri spoke first.
"So I'm 26 now?"
He then repeated almost gleefully.
"I'm 26 now!"
He ran to the small mirror over the dresser, seeing that his face was unchanged from how it looked when he last was in this room.
"I'm 26, and I look my age! I'm not some overgrown teen embarrassment anymore!"
Osmond smiled as Yanri relished his new maturity and considered what it meant for himself. There was a slight knock at the door. Osmond opened the door to find Anson. His face was etched with grief. 5 years. My studio, Anson began. It's gone. Osmond gently guided Anson into the room and sat him on the bed. Anson continued speaking in a hollow voice, looking back and forth between Osmond and Yanri like a man looking for someone to wake him up from a bad dream. My studio in Warpwood Burl, my gallery, the statuary garden, all are gone, sold and liquidated. My apprentices didn't know where I was and were forced into it by the council. Anson's confused look soured into anger. The council is using it to train security forces in combat magic. His voice turned icy cold. They were using some of my statues of people as targets.
I demanded answers from a council member patrolling the street. How can this be? I yelled.
Anson put his head in his hands.
She said, they attacked our children, our haven for them to explore life.
Anson looked directly at Osman.
The war chanters are gathering in Melisari and Cinderfall. The Isles are readying for war.
Osman walked out onto the balcony silently as Yanri caught Anson up with all Jacques had told them. Osman returned inside when silence fell over the room.
What do they know that we don't know? If there have been no recent attacks, why are they still preparing for war?
Osman continued.
I know Serena. She didn't just give up. So she either figured out I don't have the Vermilion Blade, or has found Talon. Are you sure he's still alive?
Yanri asked.
I have to trust what I saw in the Solenfell. I heard his heartbeat and saw the chains binding him shatter.
Osman explained as best he could.
The links of those chains now flow into me.
Opening his palms out to Yanri and Anson, still showing the wounds of the Bloodblade, he said,
It was his energy and yours that let Quentin be born.
Anson calmly asked,
Okay, so what do we do?
Osman closed his eyes and painfully stated,
You two need to find Quentin without me.
Before they could protest, Osman explained,
Serena was looking for me and possibly still is. It's too risky for me to go anywhere near Quentin. Hopefully he is just living a quiet life in Lyria Bay, and the two of you going there will not draw an ounce of attention to him. We should come with you then. Quentin has been fine for 22.
Yanri paused to correct himself.
27 years. You're going to need our help. But what if he has not been fine? Osman asked. Hopefully he isn't in danger, but if destiny has made his life as strange as mine, he probably needs friends.
Osman smiled lovingly.
Or maybe even his dad's.
But what about the brewing war?
Anson asked.
I don't have it all put together, but I have little doubt that Tommen Coeur-Vermain is behind whatever is going on to pull the Isles into his plans, Osman replied. He's Talon's father, was my father's rival, and he murdered Riken. He's connected to too many people bound by fate not to be entangled in all this. If he knows about Quentin...
Anson stood and grasped Osman's forearm.
I don't like us splitting up, but I agree.
Anson reached out his arm to Yanri, who reluctantly grabbed his forearm and completed the triangle by grabbing Osman's other arm. Osman looked deep into Yanri's eyes and mouthed, I love you. Yanri swallowed hard and just nodded.
Where are you going?
Yanri asked, his voice cracking with emotion.
I'm going to find Talon.